Hi everyone, welcome to the muster drill. I'm Scott, and I saw an interesting question today. Are the cruise lines breaking the law? Hi everyone, welcome back. So, something interesting came up recently, and it it has to do with, when we book a cruise, it has to do with the check-in process for a cruise, as well as, what happens when you show up at the terminal on embarkation day to get on the ship. And that is, the cruise lines are asking you during your check-in process if you're vaccinated or not. And they're asking you to see that proof of vaccination when you arrive at the port of embarkation on cruise day. So and so that brings up the question, is the cruise line breaking the law when they do that? And yeah, basically yes. The answer to that, I think, is yes, because the Florida law is very clear. It started as an executive order, and then later, the folks in Lower Alabama voted on it and, sent it to the governor's desk, who signed it into law. So, yeah, we're talking about an actual executive order that becomes a law that says no business, including cruise lines, is allowed to ask anybody what their vaccination status is, let alone prove it. And so, there's recently a list came out from the Florida Department of Health that basically has every entity, whether that entity be a private business, a public business, or even a local government. All the local towns and municipalities and stuff in Florida. This list is huge. There are so many businesses and local governments that are on that list. Florida could literally become, Florida literally could have like 1 million times more money than Jeff Bezos if they literally started enforcing that law and charging everybody $5,000 per instance. The cruise lines alone, can you imagine, even with the reduced with the reduced amount of people on each sailing, can you imagine how many people or how much money that would make for the state of Florida if they were charging $5,000 a head? The only cruise line they obviously can't enforce that on currently is Norwegian. So, but Norwegian is the only cruise line. They're the only ones who've been doing this that, are kind of at least momentarily protected. All the other cruise lines are asking you when you check in, are you vaccinated? It's a very specific thing. Are you going to be, fully vaccinated 14 days, and do you have one of these vaccines and so forth? And then they of course want you to show that when you get to the port. So in any event, it's amazing. So there was a statement there was a statement made by the Florida, Secretary of Health or whatever, in which she had mentioned that, they're not going to enforce this. Like, I guess there was no specific statement made whether or not they were going to enforce this against any business at this point, other than, at this point they've just compiled a list, which is huge. So, but they've made a specific statement that they're not going to enforce this against any cruise line currently until they find out what's going to happen with their appeal on the temporary injunction against Norwegian. So, I guess that, they're kind of trying to play fair about that, saying, Why should we start going after the other cruise lines right now when we know we can't go after Norwegian? So that's okay. It's decent of them to do that. All right. So, so currently the cruise lines aren't going to deal with it. But, like, oh my gosh, what happens if what happens if they win their appeal against Norwegian and, to whatever extent? We're, would have to go all the way to the Supreme Court, right, in order for, for Norwegian to not have recourse to appeal the appeal. So in any event, it's going to be interesting because, what is going to happen then? Well, the question is, are the cruise lines going to want to shut down after they've had, what appears to be a, fairly successful restart? And you don't need to be an insider to know the answer to that is no. And do you really want to give up your cruise because of that? No. Nobody's going to, all the way around. It's going to be, what's going to happen? Because can you imagine? The cruise lines are not going to be paying $5,000 per person. They're not going to do that. So clearly they're just going to boom, right overnight, stop asking you questions. You're still going to have to get tested though, right? You're still going to have to get that 48-hour test because that comes from the CDC. And, that has nothing to do with, quote, Florida's vaccine passport law. So, but that's going to, that comes from the CDC. That is still going to happen. You're still going to get tested, but they're going to overnight stop asking you during your check-in, are you vaccinated? And they're going to stop requiring you to show that vaccine card. But you're probably still going to have to bring that vaccine card because now that opens up a completely separate set of issues. So let's say Florida, wins their appeal and then they go to the cruise lines and they say, listen, we're serious about this. We're going to start charging you $5,000 per person. And the cruise lines are like, okay, we are no longer going to ask that question and we are no longer going to require that, card be shown when, our guests arrive for embarkation. However, there's going to be, I bet you, at least one island on that sailing's itinerary that's going to require everybody on board be vaccinated or not get off the ship. There's a couple of different combinations of that. The Bahamas you can't even set sail. And the U.S. Virgin Islands is the same. You can't even set sail for the U.S. Virgin Islands with anybody on that ship that's not vaccinated. So you're going to have to prove that, which means they're going to have to show the vaccine cards. And with the Bahamas, the captain of each ship at each sailing has to transmit a ship's manifest of onboard passengers to the Bahamian government showing all the people who are on board and their vaccination status. So how are they going to be able to do that if they're not allowed to ask you that? And so what a pickle, man. Obviously, I can't even wrap my mind around how that will all go. So, it's going to be an interesting dilemma. Obviously the best thing to happen is for Florida to lose their appeal, or if they win their appeal, for them to not enforce it. Because otherwise the cruise lines are not going to be able to sail to U.S. Virgin Islands and they're not going to be able to sail to the Bahamas. Those are the two I can think of right off the top of my head because they're going to have to know that information before they set sail, and they cannot set sail with anybody on that ship that's not vaccinated over 12. Like with the Bahamas, at least over 12. If they're over 12 and they're not vaccinated, they can't come. So in any event, it's going to be interesting. Tell me what you think about that. This is going to be a real dilemma if, and I don't know how long it's going to take, for all of this to play out, hopefully a long time, so that we don't have to worry about it. But, I'd be really interested in knowing what you think about that. So leave me a comment below and tell me how you feel about, this entire situation, and, and let's talk about it. So I think that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you like this video, don't forget to click that like button. And then don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It'll really help us out a lot, and it won't cost you anything. You click it once and you're done. And then don't forget to click that notification bell so that you know every time we upload a new video. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.